We are here today to talk about the Contact Playbook. You might have seen just a few weeks ago, we sent out a marketing and tech update that really took a step back from all the platforms and all the apps and really just dug into the kind of organizational methodology of how you're grouping your contacts and then in turn marketing to them. I'm going to drop that a link to that Converse post in the chat for anyone who might have missed it, might want to check it out after the fact. The idea for this was really to offer up at least a few examples where you could either latch onto one, be it, there's the inner circle method, the deal focus method, or the hot to not method, which is really just ranking folks A, B, C, to offer up some examples. I think it's a very common situation where you have, the several thousand or so contacts that you've collected across all of your platforms, and it's kind of daunting to consider where to begin in terms of how to organize and then how to market to those groups on the other side. So as a kind of companion piece of that, we thought it would be great to have some of our currently active sales managers, active agents who are, have their systems dialed in, at least just so that they've got some of this organization already in place, and just talk about a little bit about that. I think everyone's going to have their kind of own method for how they approach this, but I want to thank Madison Ward, Michael Barnacle, Jen Pfeiffer for all being on today to serve as our panel. And yeah, we've got a good kind of geographic, coverage here of our groups with Madison and Arnold, Michael managing the Pacific Heights office, and Jen there in the Marin office. So with that, I really just kind of want to kick things off and talk about the why of it all. Maybe talking about challenges. I kind of alluded to some of that, but thinking about maybe what the biggest challenge you found in terms of before you organize, when contacts aren't organized effectively. What are some of the things that you run into? And we'll start with Maddie and then go around the horn here.
Yeah, I get to go first.
Yeah, putting you on the spot. I did not prompt that, so we'll give you the.
No, it's cool. I would say from like one thing that's always been a challenge for me is I try to, on a quarterly basis. Sometimes if I'm really on top of it, it'll be on a monthly basis, but I follow up. I have, my contact database. I have people lined up as clients, prospects, buyers, sellers, and I have all their properties situated in my CRM and all their anniversaries. I try to, monthly or more likely every quarter, go through and make sure that I've added all the new people in, if they haven't been added already. And then the other thing that I always recommend agents do is reach out to the people that you haven't heard from, that are not interacting with what you're sending them, and say, hey, I'm going through my database. I'm clearing out, my active clients. Are you still actively searching? Are you still actively considering selling? And it's a really great way to engage with them again if they're not engaging with you. And sometimes they'll say, no, I bought a house somewhere else and we're not interested anymore, and you can close them out. Or they'll say, oh yeah, we're still definitely, and we see everything you send us, and we really enjoy your neighborhood updates or whatever. And so that's one thing I do, but trying to every 3 to 4 months really go through and update everything so that it's staying fresh.
That makes sense. It sounds like the challenge in there is really kind of getting on a regular schedule. I know that's easier said than done, and kind of following up and handling the different varieties of responses that you get back. How do you respond to that person that says, I'm done. I'm found the home and not looking now? How do you kind of stay engaged with them, or do you just kind of let them go?
It depends on what it is. If it's somebody that's like, oh no, we're not thinking about selling anymore, I'll totally still leave them in my database and maybe stop bothering them, but kind of like passively be reaching out to them through email updates or just listeds or just solds. The person though that, if they say that they're, they bought in our area, we're a second home market. And so if somebody says, we purchased in, say, Pioneer instead of Arnold, then I say, oh, that's so great. Like, I have you guys property. If I can help you in the future, definitely reach out. And depending on the relationship, I'll keep them active in there and still passively send them things, but I won't directly reach out to them beyond that. So you never know.
You never know. That makes a lot of sense too. I mean, floating out the kind of passive follow-ups might open to something up down the line. Michael, what about you? If someone's shopping for a second home in San Francisco, they're in a good situation. I would start there. It's probably a bit of a different client or clientele, but like as far as challenges you face, if you can recall back, because Michael, for those that don't know, Michael's very kind of tech forward, organized, has always kind of leaned into the platforms. Can you recall to a time when you weren't so organized with your contacts and some of the struggles you faced?
Well, I guess let me say that I came here 13 years ago from the East Coast, and one of the things that I committed myself to doing, we were on the Google platform at that time, but I find that just keeping things straight in Google Contacts is the best starting point for me. And I guess it also depends on how many people are in your database. For example, if you're doing business in San Francisco, if you do 10 transactions or 12 transactions a year, you're probably making a pretty good amount of money. So it doesn't take a huge sphere of influence necessarily to get there. So if you have 2 or 3, let's say you have 200, 300 people in your database, then it's a question of how to best organize them. And that's something I've always focused on. So as an example, I might have a category that says clients, hyphen, active, clients, and then another one, clients, hyphen, past. I might have a category that's prospects, hyphen, A. And then in brackets, be in touch with them within 30 to 60 days, kind of thing. Prospects B, 60 plus. Prospects C, it's kind of a nurturing thing over time. So once you got people into categories, then you can, even if you don't use a CRM, you can just use Google Contacts and say, okay, I said that my prospect B, I'm going to be in touch with every 60 days. Let me look at the list of people in prospect B label and contact them. So you can do it without a CRM, just as long as you have everybody differentiated within your base. Now, the good part about having the Moxie system and ActivePipe is that if you have them organized in Google, it just transfers over in the same categories. And in the so for example, if I were to look at my active prospects or my prospects B, and I might have, let's say, 25 of them in Google Contacts. Well, if I go over to ActivePipe, sure enough, I got 25 in ActivePipe. Now I can use that ActivePipe group to send them a newsletter or whatever. So anyway, that's just a quick highlight of how I see the world.
Yeah, it sounds like you kind of have a combination there of our inner circle method that's kind of sphere of influence based, and then you also have the kind of ranking between like the A and B to kind of determine like who's like a prospective client who's potentially more active there.
And you can put
these approach.
Yeah, and you can put some of those categories on some kind of a campaign if you want to, where they get messaging from you quarterly or monthly. If you have their birthdays in there, it can trigger to remind you that it's their birthday and just send something out to them. So yeah, it takes a little bit of organization up front, but Google, frankly, makes it easy.
It does, and I'll say it. I did not prompt Michael or anything to say that, but it does align with our vision for on the tech side of things here. That organizing in Google means that you're set up well to use Engage, ActivePipe, and really other CRMs. We're going to talk platforms in a bit, but I want to give Jen a chance to speak to struggles if you have them, or Jen, if you just kind of want to speak to where you are in terms of your contact organization, if you want to kind of summarize your journey there.
Yeah. So I have a database, and my database is broken into my SOI, and in that, so SOI, and then also B2B, which is all the agents who I have met at conferences or networking events, Facebook groups, whatever. And then I have vendors. And that database is just Google Sheets, and I tag people differently. Obviously, I have my advocates, and then I have my A clients, and then I have B and C. That's standard. Everybody does that. I get it. But what really, and I'll just talk about the database, I guess, first before we talk about CRMs.
Yes, that'd be great.
So what really was a game changer for me was about five years ago. What I did was I decided to categorize everybody in groups, because I really was leaning into social media, and I really wanted to get super personal with them individually. So I've got, I have 576 people in my SOI database. I've got 22, just a little over 2,200 people in my B2B. And I've got 77 vendors. So in that database, it's, again, Excel sheets. I've tagged people because they're also tagged in Google Contacts. And then it's a full on, I've got everybody's contact info. At the bottom in different sheets, I have it separated into events, because I do a lot of events. I do community events and I do educational events. And so if you could see what I'm seeing, my data base is really like, I can look at somebody along the, the vertical line and get to their name, and I could see what they're tagged as. And then I could go down to my sheets and I could see, oh, have they come to one of my drinks on the deck? Or have they come to my gratitude party? Or have they done this? And that way I'm able to tag them that way, follow them, right? Keep in touch with them. What I did 6 years ago, I didn't take my database. I took a piece of paper and I put down a group of people, because I figure these people are going to be my tribe. These people are my pride, or whatever you want to call it. And so I categorize them into like shy, cautious, risk averse, loud, boisterous, extroverted, confident, older, younger, athletic, focused, food oriented, like they like restaurants, art, architecture and design, yada, 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 right? I have them all mapped out. And then what I did, and this took about 6 months, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I was managing at the time, so that's might have why it took a little bit longer. But I wrote down everybody I knew from memory, and I put them in those categories. And some people fit into 2 or 3. And then what I did was I went into my database and I looked at my database. I'm like, oh my God, how could I forget this person? How could, and I added them to those categories. And then I went through my phone and I realized how many people weren't on my database and not on the sheet. So anyway, so I went through my phone and I categorized all of those people. So now I had a really complete database, and all of these people were labeled or identified. And then I started living in everybody's DMs. I started making videos that were very specific. So like if art, architecture and design, I would create videos and talk about something like that, right? mid-century design home. And I would send it, I would either DM people the video, or since I have all their information, I just upload it into Meta, and then it gets, shot out to them, whatever you want, so delivered to them.
Right.
So that was key. That was the best thing I ever did. I mean, I took 6 months to really think about these people, but you know what? In those 6 months, it was so amazing. I'd be thinking about somebody. I'm like, oh, Bill, yeah. And he would call me because I really believe that if you're thinking about somebody, they're thinking about you too. And so it was a wild ride. I tested this and it was true. I started thinking about my database. And so now every day, now I don't really look at my database. So just to close this string, my database every week gets a newsletter from me, and it's a little bit of market stats and then events that are happening and then sort of my thoughts. They get it weekly. That's just on autopilot. It just goes. And I've had some people unsubscribe, that's totally fine. Like, I unsubscribe to things, so
Sure.
it's fine. But doing that whole exercise was good on so many levels.
No, I'm sure. And it sounds like you had dividends that continue to pay off there and kind of surface themselves. So that's,
Yeah.
and this worked out really well here, where I feel like we have three very distinct kind of approaches, which I love. That was also not very well planned, kind of serendipitous here, that Jen, you clearly went and put a lot of hard work there, that 6 month period, categorizing folks, tagging them, and then you're kind of starting to see that pay off. So I'm thinking that there might be one or two of us in the audience here. Well, one wondering what are the tags, what are the right tags for me, and like kind of how you kind of set how did you like kind of map that all out in terms of like, I guess, what is too specific, or like how did you land on those groups?
I really paid attention what sort of social media was being sent to me, delivered to my FYP or feed.
Yeah.
And
that's the For You page for the non-TikTokers on the call.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a few.
Okay. And I just kind of created categories. So and other people might be different, I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to do things differently, but this was all encompassing to me. It's the food, the travel, the intellectually curious, the nostalgic is really good.
Yeah.
If you can tap into people, if you could figure out who's nostalgic, it's usually, to be honest, any one of your listings that's a hoarder, they're nostalgic. But if you can tap into that, then those get really well received. If I do videos regarding Marin history, San Francisco history, whatever, people really respond to that.
So in the end, it does kind of sound like something you intuited based on what your algorithms were serving up to you, and kind of knowing your group. And I like just kind of putting your head down and really considering it, which I think, can be kind of daunting, but has a lot of benefits to it.
It sounds like Jen, that you have kind of shifted your emphasis on client communication to social media to a large extent.
To a large extent, yeah. I started seeing a few years ago how many people were DMing me, and I was like, that's weird. Like, why don't they just, whatever, email me or something? But so I'm like, well, if they're living in DMs, I'm going to live there. And so I don't do specific videos for people, for one person, but if I do something that's investment driven, like, 1031 exchange, a little missive on that, I'll send it and I'll tag my, people who are really into investments. Those could be my Goldman Sachs guys, not real estate investments. Those could be my my, single moms who want to kind of get a leg up and get into the, into the real estate world, just trying to make extra money. Those could be, Airbnb, investment rental people. Like it's a lot of people fall into those each of these categories.
Right. And I was trying to remind, just based on all the agents that we've helped over the years, getting their contacts organized, is that ultimately you want to think about how you're communicating and marketing to this group. So if that's kind of your North Star, your compass, as it were, in terms of how to organize them. So
but I do want to say one thing. Cautionary is, a few months back, they were saying, oh, TikTok's going to go away and what are we going to do and everything. And that's when I realized my email is the best resource. Every week I get, and I play around with my email delivery as well, but nobody's going to take your email list from you, right? I mean, Instagram could close down, Facebook could close down, whatever, but you've got emails. So, I really encourage any agent to start emailing, weekly, but at least every other week, and building your database on email.
So true. Email has been around for a long time. It's an open standard and a protocol. It's not owned by any one entity, and so it's here to stay. And so it can be kind of your lifeblood, really, as far as communicating with your database.
Yeah.
I'd say email and phone numbers are kind of right in there, and of course the social networks of the day are always going to be valuable places to market as well. As long as we have TikTok, as long as we have Instagram, it's definitely worth being on there.
I'd just like to add, Jen, you probably do this, but you can also put those clients into multiple tags if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So, they could also be on your monthly market tracker. So you maybe have a tag that's called market tracker, so that at the end of each month, you just send to that group the market tracker, or you ask your staff to do it.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. Well, it's a perfect segue into platforms to kind of talk about like where some of this organization is happening. But I do want to give the group here an opportunity to chime in if you have questions. You want to jump off mute, or if you want to drop something in the chat here for our panel. Christy, Elisa, Chris, Lorraine, Jana, Steffi, Greg. If you have anything, feel free to jump in here. But Maddie, you mentioned that you're doing your organization, that kind of monthly, quarterly check-in that you're doing in a CRM. We want to hear about your kind of platforms of choice. So we'll kind of go through the order here. And what are you using right now, Maddie?
I actually use just like the Moxie platform. Honestly, I didn't start using a CRM until like 3 years ago. And my dad was really into Top Producer, and I always thought it was kind of cumbersome and clunky and antiquated. And he still to this day uses it, and it's worked really well for him. I've actually found Moxie to be pretty simple because it integrates with Gmail, it integrates with Zillow, you have ActivePipe out of it, and all your contacts draw over. And I send out, I'm not a huge social media person, so I do rely on the email announcements and market updates and sending out listing announcements. And so having all that just seamlessly go together for me is super helpful. So I'm a big fan of Moxie, and I like that you can put in the client anniversaries and properties that they've purchased or properties that they've sold. And it seems to be relatively seamless. It definitely loads really slowly, but I think that's going to be any big data program that you work with.
Yeah, I appreciate the nod for Engage. We've had our struggles with it over the year, but as you say, it does serve its purpose, especially if you're really focused on tracking anniversaries, making sure that you're doing that kind of regular outreach with neighborhood news and the various campaigns we have there. It does serve well, and all of us here on the call have access to Moxie Engage. That's maybe its best, is the ease of access, and that it plays well with your Google contacts, as Michael mentioned, you organize them there and they'll automatically sync to your Engage account and you can send right out of there. You also now will, as this kind of transition is happening from Engage to ActivePipe, which you've probably heard us kind of beating the drum in the last 6 months over. That's the kind of new email marketing tool that is under the Moxie umbrella. It's the same case there, that your Google contacts will flow over to ActivePipe. So you're setting yourself up well with that platform. Michael, you talked about this a little bit with Google Contacts kind of being your hub for your organization. What are you doing otherwise, or what other platforms and systems do you use beyond that? Oh, we're not hearing you yet, Michael.
Sorry about that. I've actually tried a few different ones over the years, but I'm currently using Moxie in conjunction with then ActivePipe. I have used Follow Up Boss, which I think is a pretty good CRM. Of course, you have to pay for it. And then I had tried Copper in the past, which is another pretty resilient one, but again, you pay for them. So if your needs are relatively simple, I think you can either live in Google Contacts or you can live in Moxie quite easily. And now that we have ActivePipe, ActivePipe is a distribution, I would call it, system for mass email and so forth. So, but the combination works pretty well for me. If I, for example, want to send the same message to 100 people, it's like a no-brainer. You just take the tag already exists in Google, so it's carried over to Moxie and to ActivePipe, and then you just grab that tag and send a mass email to 100 people at once.
That's right. It's so powerful that way, and the email deliverability much more reliable, I would say, with ActivePipe. That's one of the things we like most about it.
I actually communicate with the agents in my office that way. So I have 90 agents, and I can then look to see who opened it and who didn't, which is, also beneficial when you're working with clients. You want to see who actually opened it.
Of course, that's really valuable insight, knowing who's so.
And if you build into those messages certain features like click here to see my newest listings, or click here to add yourself to my mailing list, or click here to opt out. All of that is shown within ActivePipe. So it'll show you that they interacted with your message 2, 3, 4 times by clicking on different things, and it'll show you what they clicked on.
That's right. Especially, the ActivePipe reporting, really valuable insight. And I mean, most CRMs worth their weight in salt will have that kind of feature, have some level of tracking. So I think a kind of general takeaway for this section as we talk about platforms is that there are a lot of options out there. We all have access to at least a couple platforms here, and Moxie Engage and ActivePipe, and everyone has a Google Contacts account. What's most important is that you choose a system, or that kind of bundle of system. Google Contacts is really tough to get away from just because it plugs into so many things. It's usually a good place to have a good store of your contacts, of your database living there, so that you can plug it into other systems. Jen, I'm really curious to hear, because you talked us through quite a bit as far as creating videos, sliding in those DMs, getting the email marketing and so forth. What's your kind of current stack of apps and platforms?
Yeah, so my biggest pain point really throughout my career was consistent communication. A lot of times when you've got 1 or 2 clients, you can kind of stay, up to speed. But with me, once I get like 7 or 8, the pressure I feel to, somebody calls and says, hey, would you like to sell our, or, we'd like to meet you to, sell our house. All of a sudden I was feeling this real pressure because I hadn't yet created like templated emails. I hadn't systemized that. I would recreate the wheel every single time. I'd say, oh, great, it's nice to meet you. So, and I'd love to come over and take a look at your house. Would 1 o'clock work? Just whatever, every single time. And for buyers too. And it was very stressful for me because I knew it wasn't efficient, and I like efficiency. And it took up space in my head when it didn't have to. So I really set out on a path to automate everything. And I went through loads of testing CRMs, and I really came up liking HubSpot. I did one-page CRM for a while, but it didn't integrate AI tools as many as I wanted. And HubSpot really did. So I settled on HubSpot, and then I went through the very long and arduous process of, creating workflows to stream and standardize the seller side or the buyer side from initial inquiry all the way through close of escrow. That was my goal. Like, I want this systemized. I know that I go to people's websites for whatever, travel arrangements or whatever, and everything is so systemized. And I'm like, I'm going to achieve that. And I have. I mean, I'm still working on a few things that, I want to change up, but HubSpot integrates sort of workflow with MailChimp, Notion, which I live on Notion. And Jeff, I think you and I've talked about this. Like, Google Drive, my brain just doesn't receive it. I love the G Suite, all G Suite products, but Google Drive, for some reason, my brain doesn't figure it out. So I moved everything to Notion, and I've got like a buyer's page and a seller's page on Notion that'll take them through all the steps. But it integrates with Real Scout, Send Out Cards, Zapier. I have Zaps for so many workflow automations. Loom, I Loom everything. I Loom, so that way I don't have to spend time doing it, because I've done the video, and I, will send it to the client explaining the BRBC or whatever. Once they read that, and I can tell when they read it because I send everything either on a high note through my CRM or through the CRM, and I'm able to see what they've read. Then we have conversations about it, but it really has saved me a lot of time. It also, it integrates with Facebook and then Google Meet, to schedule my appointments. So HubSpot was where it's at for me. And I've been really, really happy.
Yeah, and HubSpot, I know, is just a very expansive program. It probably won't be for everyone, but if you're really trying to go, I think it's a very admirable goal to move towards having as much systematized around the kind of follow-up as possible, because these automations, they don't get tired, they don't deal with fatigue or anything like that. And by investing the time and energy to set them up, means that you have this kind of ongoing machine, this engine that's automatically picking up the slack for you.
Yeah, that's what I really wanted. Yeah.
So for those that taking notes at home that might want to kind of look into some of these platforms, I was just kind of notating them. HubSpot kind of at the heart of it for Jen, also plugged into Real Scout, which we all also another platform that we have access to on the call. That's kind of it's a quasi CRM. You can certainly track contacts in there, but it's really built around the kind of home search, home valuation for your sellers, and giving them market updates and the like. So, and a lot of those templates are already built out in Real Scout. So that might be a good place for you to start if you're just wanting to have some of that automated follow up, and it's specific to that particular contact, especially if you have like a home address for them, if you know what their goals are. You get really great insights that you're just not going to get on the MLS or any other platform in terms of what kinds of listings they're gravitating to, if they're an active buyer. But I'll kind of pull myself out of the kind of Real Scout rabbit hole. It's easy to kind of tumble down here. But you did mention Zapier, which is another platform that's been around that's really a connector of different apps. So it sounds like Jen's gotten really into setting up the zaps, as they call them. That's the kind of their name for the automations. But it's a way to say, as a quick example, let's say, when I add someone to Google Contacts, have this happen in HubSpot, and then have this happen in Real Scout. I might automatically sign them up essentially, and they have a massive catalog of the different apps and services that they connect. So if you're using a couple of these, Zapier can kind of be the glue that connects those two. Of course, Google Workspace writ large, and I don't think you're alone there, Jen, in that Google Drive isn't so much of it's not a great organization system. It's kind of like a hard drive. You're kind of leaning on the search bar a lot to find stuff. So that's where Notion, which is it's really an extensible I always think of it as like a second brain destination, like a place to keep notes. You have unlimited storage. You can attach files, images, video, and all that stuff. So if you're kind of a visual thinker and kind of want to organize there, it wouldn't serve you so much as a CRM, but for a project space, if you want to start mapping some of this stuff out, Notion is free to start with, and you might just find that it works so well for you that you might want to move to one of their paid plans. So I just wanted to touch briefly on at least some of those platforms, because a lot of them are kind of best in class tools. And Loom, you mentioned, which we also use on the technology side, really valuable for these really quick videos that you can record and then send a quick link off to. What's really handy there is you can see the number of views coming back. I don't have a paid plan, Jen. You might be able to say if it tells you who is actually viewing, if it's a unique
Yeah,
it does.
It does. It tells you, who's viewing it. And I love Loom. I love Loom for everything.
Yeah.
What do you use it for, Jen? I mean, could you give us a couple of examples, maybe?
Please.
Yeah. So, let's see. Say a seller calls me up and says, "Hey, we're interested in selling our house," right? I will, I'm just kind of walking it through, but I will send my whole the seller inquiry is received, and then I email them back and I will explain, that sounds great. Let's schedule a Zoom call prior to, and then if they agree, once they agree, that's the trigger. If they say yes, great. If not, I'll follow up later, but I don't start any work until they agree. When we have the meeting, and again, this is through Zap, it schedules the meeting for me. So we're on Google Meet, we talk, and I find that we are, have chemistry, that they're kind of real people. I'll explain to them that I'm going to send them something via high note. In that high note is a Loom. So is one of my Looms. So for instance, I could send them the RLA, the residential listing agreement. I have a Loom library, and in that Loom library is RLA overview. And I go through and I talk about everything. Buyers, sorry.
How long is that video?
I think it's 6.5 minutes, maybe.
So
but if you do the free version, I think you only get up to 5 minutes. But I talk so much that I'm like, I gotta do the paid version. But so if it were a buyer, conversely, I go through the BRBC. That's definitely one. Anything that I have to show people online, because it takes a screen recording, I have them for all of the disclosures and advisories. I explain what everything means there. So then when I meet them in person, I don't have to do it over again. Like, I don't have to have that conversation. I'll have a conversation with them, of course, if they go, hey, we didn't really fully understand the Marin County disclosures and disclaimers. Could you look at paragraph 14 with us or whatever? And then also I'm very cognizant too with my sellers. I show them what the BRBC is. I give them that as well, because I explain how they're going to react to it. Conversely, with the buyers, I give them a listing agreement and all the listing paperwork. And I say, this is what the seller is going to sign. So when you're making your offer, with the BRBC, this is what it's going to mean to them. So I try to make sure that each party knows what the other party is going to be, presenting or presented with.
Cool.
I really love that. A way to, it's similar to how we use it on the tech team in terms of like, when you don't need to explain something over and over. And, sometimes you'll miss something here and there. With the Loom, you kind of get it once. And it's that kind of ideal explainer of the residential listing agreement or whatever it might be. And you can just kind of share that around and track what the viewership looks like.
And I always send one out before they remove contingencies. I go through the contingency removal form, and will always, at that point in our relationship, when they're in escrow, that's one of the looms that they will get.
Okay.
I was going to say, Jen, I love what you're doing. And it's funny, I had this vision way back when I was really an active agent of like having a series of communications, for example, for buyers. And listening to you now, I can see how one could augment that today. For example, you're working with a buyer, they don't understand what escrow and title is, right? So you work with them week 1, week 2, you show them some properties. So maybe in the middle of week 2.5, you send them a video and say, let me introduce you to what when we get to the closing, we're going to deal with closing and title insurance and escrow. And then maybe you have a video that includes your title rep and just a quick explainer of what that process means for each step. You could do the same thing with inspections. You could do the same thing with insurance and other things. Mm-hmm. So the sky is the limit for anybody that really wants to tackle it.
Yeah.
Sounds like you have.
And it's really nice also. I'll do the timeline. I'll do a special video, a Loom video with the timeline individually for each sale, because I'm really kind of going over it. And also a lot of times these young kids or whatever, 40-year-olds are like, I can't look at this. I can't talk about it until 10 o'clock at night because I'm so busy. I'm at work so late. I'm not staying up until 10 o'clock at night. So I have started sending Loom videos. Congratulations, we're in escrow. This is the timeline, and this is what you can expect.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Called self-preservation, Michael.
So do you have your own broadcast studio, Jen?
No.
Not just yet. Coming soon. Lorraine likes your setup as well. It sounds like, Jen. Yeah, I'm completely on. The more I learn, we've had a chance to chat over the last few weeks here about all the great systems. It's really just fascinating to hear how you have it all dialed in, and it's a kind of an ongoing process there. As the hour just kind of slipped away here. I really wanted to make sure though that we kind of hone in on a couple of things. Like we've been speaking to this throughout, but the main kind of takeaway I think from all this really is that having a system in place is the most important thing. It's the most important starting point. If you want any help with that, I mean, I know that we helped. Is Mickey still on the call? Looks like she might have dropped off, but my team has recently helped Mickey where you might find yourself in this situation where you have the contacts from that old CRM that you were using years ago. You got some in Google Contacts, some on your phone, like Jen had, that all needed to kind of wind up in the same place. We can help with that on the technology team. We're happy to if you schedule an appointment with us, there is the tech appointment link on My Corcoran, and we can get you on a plan through that. It might take a couple of calls to get there, but it'll really be worth it in the long run. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. If you're needing a little bit of help to kind of get organized and decide on what works best for you, we can even help you think through what are those right groups that you want to target and market to, and what's the right app platform and kind of messaging for them. But I want to go around. We'll go in reverse order. We'll start with Jen this time, of just any kind of aha moments, or like a specific app or software or service that really kind of kick things in a high gear. I know we've kind of already been speaking around that, but if you don't have a kind of aha moment, maybe just like a single piece of advice for our group here. And of course, we're going to be posting the recording, so for those thinking forward.
Okay. I think, I think I've discussed my aha moments, but I will say, I used to always say, and I still think it, your network is your net worth. And I believe that to my core. I think you should look at your database every single day. My CRM is just my deals pipeline. I don't put anybody else into my CRM. It is just deals. And but I look at that too every day, because there's tasks to be done. But I really believe that if you don't have a database, and however you want to structure it, that is absolutely complete, then you should just stop doing what you're doing and work on that, and just make sure it's done. That is going to elevate everybody's business. It should be, and you shouldn't be missing a mobile number. You shouldn't be missing a social handle. You shouldn't be missing a physical, mailing address. You need it absolutely complete.
Really well said. Michael?
Well, I'm going to aha on top of Jen's aha. Something that came up to me recently with one of the agents in my office was, she said, "You took all that time to organize your database all by yourself?" And I said, it's not that big of a deal. You just sit down and you do it. You can start with a spreadsheet, a Google sheet, an Excel sheet. You put first name, last name, email, phone, birthday if you've got it, whatever else you want to put in columns, and then just gradually work on it. And then you can add a tag to that and upload it to Google. It's really easy as pie. It just takes, or if you've already got them in Google, just put a tag on them. But it's not as complicated as people think. If they're already in their database, download them into an Excel or CSV, convert it to Google, and then categorize them from there. It's just not that big of a deal.
That's right. I think it does ultimately come back to just the tedium, if you like, of going through it. It's not mentally taxing so much as, well, it might be for some, but it's something that you can figure out in any case. And I want to tie that back to what Jen had mentioned about really just being deal focused in terms of who goes in the CRM. I think that really just kind of eliminates a lot of the noise. It can take that 2,000 plus name database down to really that core group of folks that you want to be honed in on, and making sure they're receiving that follow-up. So, even if it takes a few sittings, I really like the practice you mentioned, Jen, of just kind of getting out the blank piece of paper and like getting those names down from memory, because I think you'd probably discover within yourself that you're kind of in touch with who those potential like deals are, the opportunities that you have within your own sphere.
Yeah. And I will say, my goal really is to have people jump out of my database and into my CRM, but I need to market to those database people every week until they do. Right. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Last but certainly not least, Maddie, what's your aha moment or your bit of advice for our group here?
I would say like biggest piece, like aha / advice is just be organized, be consistent, and be strategic with your information that you're Like if you have a database of people, maybe it's like a neighborhood that you're farming, maybe you send them mailers. Whenever you sell something in their neighborhood, make sure that they are all getting like a just sold or a just listed, and make sure that you're capitalizing on the business you're doing to interact with these people, so that, like Jen said, you can get them into your CRM instead of just your database. And I think if you're not consistent with it, you might as well not even be doing it. That's like kind of, because like it's like going to the gym. Like you could go once every 6 months, but there's no point. Like you might as well just take the afternoon, And so I think
feel a
with
little
like
attacked, but yes, I agree. I'm working on it. Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's like the biggest piece.
That's right. The consistency is key. And I think there's that floating number out there of, it takes 7 asks or appearances in someone's inbox, their DMs, before you kind of get movement. So that I think that's where that consistency really pays off. It might not, pay off those first those couple attempts, but down the line, you suddenly just kind of start to reap the benefits of it. Well, this was an incredibly insightful conversation. I really want to thank Maddie, Michael, and Jen for sharing their thoughts and giving us a peek into their systems and how they're thinking about all this. Hopefully we gave you some different kind of ways of organizing to consider how we're marketing to those groups, and certainly a lot of systems on the list. We are going to be sharing this recording on the Converse post. So if there's anything you wanted to go back and check out, we will be sharing that. Once Google's done processing it, we'll lop off the kind of banter that you just had to be here for. If you missed it, unfortunately, it's lost to the ether, but we'll post that here in the coming days. And we've got just a few minutes. Want to just give one last opportunity. If there's any questions from our group here. Christy says, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your input, giving me other ideas for organization. I second that. Absolutely, Christy. All right, y'all. Well, doesn't look like we have any questions. Thanks again, everyone, for attending today. And we hope to see you on the next one soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye.
Thank you.